Fox News alert. The National Archives has just admitted that they have in their possession over 5,000 emails tied to Joe Biden's alias email accounts. Joe Biden, as vice president, used 3 different aliases: Robin Ware, Robert L. Peters, J.R.B. Ware. None of these are Biden's Secret Service code names. These are secret email accounts that Joe Biden was using to exchange covert messages with Hunter Biden, other Biden family members, friends, and staffers. And the persnickety librarians at the archives who...
And the fact that somebody in his position would think they would be able to get away with this. How? This is just, bro, this is a joke.
Who are salivating to see Trump in prison over a paperwork dispute are stonewalling the release of over 5,000 secret Biden emails. They're saying sorting through the secret emails will take years. The National Archives, they have 3,000 employees. It takes less than 15 seconds to read an email, so you do the math. Another cover-up. And Joe Biden's lawyers will have Sharpies, and they get to redact what they consider private or privileged. Hunter, wow. I'm flying to Ukraine tomorrow. Call me about the prosecutor we were talking about. Redacted. There's a good chance we won't see most of these emails for years, which is why House Republicans need to open an impeachment inquiry immediately. So how do we find out about these secret emails? The laptop, obviously. Here's one from a White House staffer to Robert L. Peters, Joe Biden, CCing Hunter. Quote, boss, 8:45 a.m. prep for 9 a.m. phone call with Ukrainian President Poroshenko. Then we're off to Rhode Island for infrastructure event, and then Wilmington for UDEL commencement. So why was White House staff CCing Hunter about Vice President Joe Biden's phone call with the Ukrainian president? Why would Hunter need to know that?
The owners of Burisma were squeezing Hunter Biden to call Washington to get help. Along this same time period, we found a pseudonym where he copied Hunter Biden, and it would lead one to believe that this was Joe Biden's way of copying Hunter Biden to say, okay, send it to the Burisma owners and tell them help is on the way. And 5 days later, Joe Biden flew to Ukraine to begin the process of firing the prosecutor.
Hunter was also using his dad's secret email address to get his cronies government jobs. Here's one. Before you fill the position, please talk to me. McGrail very much wants to serve as detail for Treasury. Joe Biden's alias responds, call me right away. Don't worry. The crony got the job. There could even be as many as 6 Biden alias email accounts. One of his personal favorites, 67 Stingray. You know, the car that he almost lost in the kitchen fire that almost killed his cat? That one. And the same time Joe Biden was using secret alias email accounts to talk business with Hunter, Joe Biden was flying Hunter to at least 15 other countries on Air Force Two. We paid for that. Countries where Hunter conducted business. What do you call secret flights, secret email addresses, burner phones, shell companies, offshore accounts, client dinners and phone calls, 150 suspicious activity reports, and $20 million of foreign money funneled into 10 different Biden family bank accounts? Well, a Biden business partner called it selling the Biden brand. And the White House won't say whether it's still happening.
We know that from a Hunter Biden associate now that he sold the appearance of access to then Vice President Biden. Are you confident that he has stopped doing that?
That is a question for Hunter Biden.
If somebody is selling the appearance of access to the White House, that is a question for the White House.
No, that is your I don't know how you're perceiving that.
Devin Archer talks about how he and Hunter Biden tried to profit off the Biden.
I ain't gonna lie. She looked real shaken then, like she didn't really have a response for that question. It kind of rattled her a little bit. Like, I study people, and just look at how she just, her blinking of the eyes, her stumbling over her words, yeah.
If somebody is selling the appearance of access to the White House, that is a question for the White House.
No, that is your I don't know how you're perceiving that.
Devin Archer talks about how he and Hunter Biden tried to profit off the Biden brand. What is the Biden brand?
I'm not going to get into it from here. I'm not going to get into it from here. We're going to move on.
So the White House isn't going to...
So emails, offshore accounts, all this stuff. When is he running the country? I mean, what is he doing at this point? You know what I mean? Like, this stuff is becoming a joke. And when I say joke, it's like the people, are we a joke to them? What, like, we have real pressing issues, inflation, different things going on that we need to worry about, address, take care of. And this is what we're doing?
I'm going to get into whether the White House is for sale. Got it. Jonathan Turley is a George Washington law professor and a Fox News contributor. All right, so
is he even focused on the economy at this point?
the professor, when someone is conducting business in secret, then getting caught and then lying about it, does that make you more or less suspicious?
Well, there's plenty of reason to be suspicious, including the fact that the president appears to have been lying to the American people, even during the presidential campaign. Even the Washington Post has said that it's untrue what the president has said, that indeed his son made money in China. And we also know that Joe Biden was aware of these dealings. And one of the things that Archer said after his interview with Congress was that it was patently false that Joe Biden didn't know about their business. And you also see a change in the media. Now the media is willing to accept that indeed Hunter Biden was running an influence peddling operation. But they insist that he was just selling the illusion of influence and access. Well, how do we know that? Do you just assume that? These emails could go a long way to determining what was a deliverable and whether it went beyond an illusion.
Well, wealthy foreign nationals don't usually continue to pay millions of dollars over 8 years for an illusion. It's usually not how businessmen make all of those millions of dollars. I want to play some new sound from MSNBC. There seems to be a new conspiracy theory that we've put our finger on. Listen to Rachel Maddow.
The election means one of two things, if this is the way he's going to approach it. Either he loses the election and he goes to prison, or he wins the election, he doesn't go to prison, and is that for life, that he gets to be president? Will we keep having more elections, or no? If every election is a new opportunity for him to go to prison, do you think he allows us to have new elections?
So, as a preeminent constitutional scholar, do you see any warning signs that if Donald Trump is reelected, we're canceling future elections until eternity?
Well, what's bizarre about that clip is that there is, of course, other options. One is that Trump could be acquitted. You could have a hung jury. The cases could be thrown out on constitutional grounds. All of those at least are options that are worth mentioning for appearance's sake if you're a nation committed to the rule of law. Now, what is also missing in all of this is this...
That's the question, though. Will it get thrown out? Fannie Willis she's on top of things from what I'm seeing, so I'm interested to see. And then this judge is really making her stance. And as far as I've heard, I think this judge is a new judge, hasn't been a judge long. So maybe she's trying to make a name for herself. I don't know, but she's definitely calling him out on saying, listen, we're doing this march. It doesn't matter what else you have going on. So it'll be interesting to see.
Lack of faith in our system. You know, we did have a terrible, terrible attack on the Capitol on January 6th, but the system worked. The courts remained firm all the way up to the certification and afterwards. Our system held together. And I always find it strange, this crisis of faith that people have. We have a fantastic constitutional system in this country. We've been through a lot. And so having that type of hyperbolic language is not helping. I mean, we need to remain unified in the common article of faith that we have, which is the Constitution. And that system has worked and will continue to work.
If Donald Trump is convicted of any of these charges in court and his appeals are exhausted, do you see any possibility that a judge in the United States is going to throw a former president who's probably going to be 80 years old in prison?
Well, it depends on the crime, and it also depends on the timing. President Trump could indeed pardon himself for federal crimes. For the state crimes, it could create some serious complications. The court would first have to sentence him to jail, but then federal courts may get involved to the extent that that would interfere with presidential functions. We obviously have not been down that road, but we have to look towards it, and it's going to be a messy situation. The courts are going to have to deal with it, but there's a lot of road between now and then. I mean, it's still not clear what trials could occur before the election. It's also not clear if convictions that were secured would be upheld when they're challenged. It probably is going to be difficult.
That's why I say it's not only Donald Trump's on trial right now. Our system is on trial right now. How this thing plays out dictates and determines how we move forward and how people are going to view our system. Our system is on trial.
Called to bring all of these threshold challenges to the Court of Appeals before trial. Judges tend to say that you should get a verdict first and then appeal. But there are substantial constitutional questions that still have to be worked out. So all the hyperbolic language aside, there's a lot of constitutional legal questions that have to be resolved before we reach that point.
All right, Professor, thank you for going to law school so I didn't have to.
Thank you, Jesse.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe.
Welcome back to this special edition of Hannity. Earlier today, former President Donald Trump waived his right to an in-person arraignment and pled not guilty to the charges in Georgia. That means Trump has now officially pled not guilty to all 91 alleged crimes in all 4 jurisdictions. Here now with reaction is Trump legal spokeswoman Alina Hava. Alina, thanks for being here. I feel like we're going to have update after update after update after update because this is what they've done. This is what they've set into motion. Give us an update on what this means as it pertains to the case down in Atlanta and what the Trump legal strategy is.
I think it's not surprising that he pled today not guilty. Obviously, he waived his right to go in for an arraignment in person because why give them more of a media frenzy? We don't need that. So, from here, we actually get to litigate the case, which as an attorney, I look forward to. I know our legal team does as well, to getting to take our own turn at looking at all of the information and our own turn to put our side out, which is something that everybody needs to remember. It has not happened as of yet. 4 indictments are simply that, an indictment, which is just one-sided BS, for lack of a better word, on their political scheme to interfere with the leading candidate for president.
So, Alina, this is all ridiculous. It's all a circus. It's all meant to interfere inside the timeline of the election process. That's a given. So these questions sort of come with that sense of how it's. But if you're planning for Georgia, the D.C. timeline was just set for March 4th, as we know, the day before Super Tuesday.
Now, this is what I wanted to hear. I was waiting to hear if she's going to speak on whether or not the defense has enough time to prepare for this case with the timeline set forth for the trial date. This is what I want to hear if she's going to respond to.
Much sooner than your team had anticipated. What do you anticipate for a timeline down in Atlanta? Like, how quickly are they going to try to push this in your sense, and how will you push back?
Let's be clear, the Jack Smiths and the Fannie Willises and the D.A. Braggs and the Letitia James, if they could have it their way, they would have all trials the same week. It's unrealistic, it's ridiculous, and it's obvious. So what I think is happening is the judges are going to have to fight it amongst themselves. You cannot have one defendant on multiple cases. But if you do look at the timeline, like you mentioned, every single event from the indictment to the rush grand jury years after the events took place, when they didn't need to rush it, they could have had it 2 years ago. Every single thing says very clearly, Joe Biden doesn't know what he's doing in office, so let's distract America so that all we talk about is President Trump and these hoaxes, and that's really all they are. So what are they? We're going to obviously argue that it's impossible for one person to be in 4 different places. We're going to argue that this is election interference, and then we're going to take a look at each individual person and say, you ran for office based on the fact that you said you were going to get Trump, and so did you, and so did you, and now we need our Constitution and due process to step in and do its part. And if we don't have fair judges, unfortunately, we're not going to get that. So we have a great team. I love our legal team right now. I feel strong. The president feels strong. And we're going to take each one head on.
It is amazing when you look at the Hunter Biden problem, indictment.
And it's important to note, these judges are communicating with each other as well. I know that's something we've been hearing, the judge in Georgia communicating with the other judges as far as finding out when and discussing, you know, he has trial this date here, so what about your trial here, and trying to make sure the scheduling is on point. So this is the attack right now on that by Trump's defense team, and I think it's pretty smart that they do that and they start their strategy there.
Hunter Biden problem, add charges to indictment. Hunter Biden problem, indictment again. When do we set the trial date? Iowa caucuses. How about we do it the day before Super Tuesday? I've never seen anything like it. Of course, it's totally unprecedented. And the way you put it together, it is election interference. And keep us updated on what you're seeing. Appreciate your time.
Democrats in the media didn't waste much time to blame climate change for the horrific wildfire that happened in Maui.
If you look at it, I mean, everything from the fire, the tragic fire in Hawaii, to Texas, which had something like 75 days in a row, over 95. I mean, it's completely, really amazing what's happened with climate change.
To stop these disasters from getting even worse, we have to cut the carbon pollution that's driving the climate crisis.
We very, very much need to acknowledge that climate change is upon us. There are whole states, by the way, Jake, where you can't even use the words climate change because they still have a hit in the sand attitude. The Inflation Reduction Act provided some $300 billion to combat climate change and to move us away from continuing reliance on fossil fuels.
But now that narrative just got confronted by reality. Maui officials are publicly blaming Hawaii's largest electric utility company for the deadly wildfires, filing a lawsuit that claims it was their intentional and malicious mismanagement of power lines that allowed the flames to spark. Fox News Digital reaching out to 5 Democratic lawmakers who pushed the theory that man-made global warming was to blame, but only hearing back from 1. All right, Judge, they have a lawsuit, and that's going to be about the power company to deal with. But immediately, it's almost as if any issue can, if you don't want to deal with accountability, you just say climate change.
Yeah. Well, I think I've said this before. In the winter, it's all about COVID. In the summer, it's all about climate change, okay? And we just need to put more money into it. I heard today the president's going to ask for more money for COVID. Yeah. I mean, so here we go again. But look, if what Mazie... if what Mazie, Senator Hirono says is true, $300 billion to fight climate change, how come this kind of thing is happening? All right, the Inflation Reduction Act was all about a giveaway to the green energy companies. In the end, it's not about global warming and it's not about climate change. It's about negligence, pure and simple. It's about ineptitude. It's about an area that didn't keep up with what was going on because they were trying to get to the green energy next step. And so they were too busy working on green energy. They ignored the obligation of the current situation. They didn't fill the water reservoir. Okay, they didn't turn off the power lines when they got a warning that there would be high winds coming, and they failed to follow protocol to shut down the live power lines. And so what we've got now is the power lines are igniting dry grass and bush, and people died as a result of it. And they didn't even send off the sirens. They said, the guy said he was worried that people would run toward the fires if they turned the sirens off.
Right.
You know, it's about an excuse. We live in a world that's all about excuses, that is blocked in terms of ideology.
And see, that's the part that makes me mad. They know climate change is a soft spot. It's a soft spot for people. You know what I mean? When it comes to the environment, when it comes to the planet, when it comes to all of that type of stuff, that's a sore spot for a lot of people. So for you to lean on, now this is all alleged. Now, if these companies did that, and it was sheer negligence, and y'all, bro, Yeah. And that's what they do to us a lot of times. They know our certain trigger points, and climate change is one of them.
It's all tribalism. You're on this side or you're on this side. Facts are irrelevant.
And they had all of this money, Brian, that they were, well, they knew about the wildfire threat. They had money that they could use to deal with the wildfire threat, but instead they used it on green energy projects, and they didn't do anything to try to mitigate a problem like this one.
Right. And the guy that came out and said, we don't want to put the sirens out because we don't want people running inland. I'm pretty sure adults know not to run into a fire. Right. All right. Number two, he resigned the next day.
Right.
Nice. They call it non-native grass. They said that the grass is highly flammable. They said, you got to get it out, you got to thin it out, you got to get rid of it. They just left it. And the minute these power lines, with the downslope of the wind, along with the hurricane, it was the perfect storm. It burned everything. But they said this grass is the thing that ignited the whole thing. So having said that, if you want to talk about climate change and you want to be effective, pick your spots. When you say it all the time, people turn off. And is there anybody less interesting to talk climate change than Anthony Fauci? Was Terry Bradshaw not available?
How did he come up again on this?
Who knows? Yeah.
Terry
How did
Bradshaw.
Why? If you want to ruin my night, see Anthony Fauci even speaking on anything.
Remember when he said, if you question me, you are questioning the science. That was about COVID, but I guess it could apply here. Piers, I'll go to you.
Look, I was stunned to see him there. I mean, my idea of a personal disaster would be if I found myself trapped on a desert island for the rest of my natural life with Dr. Anthony Fauci.
The worst.
And Karine Jean-Pierre. Both of them braying at me.
Yeah, they be throwing the shots, don't they? Dang, Fauci, you can't catch a break.
Morning, noon, and night with their views on life. Look, I think that climate change is real. I believe that. I believe that man-made contributions are a significant factor in what is going on in the overheating of the planet. But I also think that there are two other massive problems in this debate: hysteria and hypocrisy. And what those two things do, a little bit like they did with COVID actually, is they discourage large swathes of the public from trusting people they should be trusting. We've got to have trust in public officials. You don't get it by blaming stuff like this on the wrong thing. You actually increase distrust in public officials.
Jesse Waters.
Tonight on Primetime, we have the researcher who...
That's why I was saying that's a sore spot, man. And when you do that type of stuff like that and you do that, people, they lose trust. We lose trust in officials right now. I mean, do we have any for any of these people running the country right now? It's sad to say, but it's true.
Who authored the initial report saying that man-made climate change was creating more ferocious and more deadly hurricanes. She's now come out and said she got her facts wrong, and there is no connection. And now nobody in the scientific community wants to talk to her. They're just running with the junk science. And sadly, this has been seized upon by these politicians. And when you blame it on climate change during a deadly tragedy, it just divides everybody, and everybody goes to their corners and they start fighting with each other when you should be trying to get to the bottom of this investigation that proves, as you said, this was negligent homicide on a mass murderous scale by Hawaii Electric.
No comment. That is the biggest story that nobody's talking about. The President of the United States did nothing, didn't comment for 3 days, and was asked about it, actually said no comment.
He doesn't want an investigation into this.
Yeah. Why is that?
Well,
rather blame it on the Republicans.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
Over 100 people dead, and we still have.
You know what? It's complicated, and there's no easy answer.
That's
what you have to remember.
That is